Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. Um, I guess that you could say that this is an update to the ongoing saga of Insys Therapeutics Incorporated, company out of Chandler, Arizona. And I really wish there wasn't a company that exemplified the fucking struggle between marijuana and big pharma and basically all the things that is wrong with a corrupt government. Uh, there really is no better example. These guys, basically, everything you could say about them as far as predatory opioid manufacturing, scumbags with shady business practices designed to um, dupe insurance companies, lie to the DEA, but somehow the DEA likes them still. Lie to the FDA, but somehow the FDA likes them still. Spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting the legalization of marijuana in Arizona, the state where they're from. Um, and getting arrested and charged with all these crimes, including racketeering. We're talking about uh, bribery. We're talking, falsely distributing narcotic drugs, highly addictive, deadly narcotic drugs to people that don't have the proper prescription. Um, just everything, man. Everything bad. Here's one of my headlines. Big Pharma caught in bribery conspiracy to push deadly dope, duping big insurance and lying to the DEA. Yep, that's one of the things. And that's an old clip, man. I made that one a while ago. Since then, I think I've made five or six more clips. We had two more people have been arrested um, since the fallout last year, including the founder, um, John Kapoor. And here's one of their big products is one of their big bragging points about and Michael Babbage. He's another one of their guys that got basically doctors to agree to get a bunch of people on this Insys or on uh, their fentanyl mouth spray. And the fentanyl mouth spray, let's just say right here, Subsys, they were basically trying their hardest to get rid of as much of that as possible. I think what they thought that this spray mechanism that was going to be like way take off more than it did. Because pills are kind of like going out of style and there's other ways like patches were becoming a thing. And as far as fentanyl goes, there was also the suckers and just other ways to administer. And it didn't go as big as he thought. So whatever, you know. They also have this thing called dronabinol, which is basically synthetic THC. And as you know, they've been trying to get that Schedule 2 status. They've got it pretty much. Let's just go ahead and read this. The DEA is finalizing Schedule 2 status for synthetic THC drug Syndros by Alicia Wallace, Cannabis staff. So the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration this week will grant Schedule 2 status to a synthetic THC drug developed by a pharmaceutical firm beset with controversy. The DEA on Wednesday is expected to finalize the previously suggested Schedule 2 status for Syndros, the FDA-approved liquid dronabinol drug developed by Insys Therapeutics, the Chandler, Arizona-based pharmaceutical company that last year donated to a campaign opposing marijuana legalization and last month saw its founder arrested on fraud and racketeering charges. So, like I said, even though he just got arrested in the middle of an opioid epidemic in this country, where people are literally dropping dead every hour from, opioids, somehow this guy is like, you know, going to get some more drugs approved and continue to sell the Insys, or I'm sorry, continue to sell the Subsys. Am I saying that right yet? Yeah. Continue to sell this fentanyl spray shit. There we go. That was right. John Kapoor and other executives were accused of providing kickbacks to doctors to prescribe the company's Subsys fentanyl spray, a highly addictive and potentially deadly opioid painkiller. Prior to Kapoor's arrest, Insys was party to several investigations, lawsuits, and enforcement actions related to Subsys. And I always wonder how many, do we got a database somewhere that tells you this is how many people that, died from Subsys? Unbelievable. Syndros advancement, approval, and scheduling have been viewed by analysts as potentially positive developments for the firm. But I looked into it, and as it turns out, people are still not too excited about the stock. Investors are not too happy about what they've been, the practices of this business. And no matter what good news seems to come their way, this looks like this is what's going on with their stock. Investors are staying away from it. I mean, it went up 10 cents on this news. But no. It's let's look at the 5-day. No, not really. I would say that it's basically going down on this news overall. Well, anyway, Insys launched Syndros in late July as a treatment to help alleviate nausea and vomiting in chemotherapy patients and to address anorexia-associated weight loss in AIDS patients. Syndros generated $700,000 in revenue during the first 2 months, company officials said earlier this month. So they're already selling it. They've already made, almost $1 million off it. And this is one of those things where it's kind of like they get the insurance companies to come aboard because they're like, hey, look, this isn't regular marijuana. So, you can hook us up, and it's just synthetic. They can make it in the lab all day long. So, and then at the same time, they can charge whatever they want for it. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the new drug application for Syndros and, alongside the Department of Health and Human Services, provided a scheduling recommendation for the drug. DEA officials concurred, noting that the drug would have the same abuse potential as other substances classified as Schedule 2, according to the preliminary unpublished filings made Tuesday in the Federal Register. I'd like to know where they came up with that conclusion. I mean, I don't know anything about this liquid dronabinol, but Schedule 2 substances include Vicodin, cocaine, oxycodone, and Adderall. You're trying to tell me that this synthetic THC stuff is as addictive as any of those? I'm having a hard time believing it. And I've actually read about dronabinol. And from what I read, the doctors were very happy about the non-addictive nature of the drug. And when they were using it for these uh issues that were mentioned above, the wasting syndrome and the nausea and then the sleep aid, or not the sleep aid, they were discovering that it also helped people with sleep disorders and sleep apnea. So they basically are opening up new doors of discovery with THC, and they're not telling anybody about it. They're not like, hey, guess what? THC turns out, man, that shit is awesome. It's totally medicinal, 100%. I mean, I guess as long as it's not stuck in a plant, which is totally natural with hundreds of other compounds, which are also good for you, then I guess it's like, it's whatever. In the final rule following, the DEA noted that 4 comments were submitted in support of Schedule 2 listing, while 4 comments were submitted in opposition. Of the later, the one indicated the dichotomy between syndrome garnering Schedule 2 status, while marijuana remained in the stricter classification of Schedule 1. I would say this, man. You can make whatever medicine you want, synthetically or otherwise, out of the cannabinoids that are in cannabis. And but you really shouldn't. The DEA is just going to go ahead and say, what was this saying again? That they were the DEA is going to noting that the drug would have the same potential as other substances classified in abuse potential as in classified as Schedule 2. What does that even mean? The drug has the same abuse potential. Like, so you're talking about Vicodin, cocaine, oxycodone, and Adderall. Look, what do people do with those? They crush them up and snort them. They take too many of them and die of overdoses. They do too much of it and stay up too long. Maybe have a heart attack. Maybe dehydrate. I mean, what are you talking about? The DEA can't just say, "Oh, this probably has the same abuse potential as cocaine, which is highly addictive and causes the user to abuse that shit until they're broke." Like, what are you talking about? I mean, you can't just say something and then it's true. I mean, you can't say, "Oh, I think that this has the same abuse potential as that." Do you? What's the measuring? There's ways you can measure abuse potential in actual things that you can measure. And I don't see any of that with this synthetic THC. And like I said, I keep saying, and I will keep saying, I have no idea what this synthetic THC is all about. I don't know if it gets you high, this dronabinol, or if it don't. If it don't, I haven't heard him say it, because it seems like it probably does get you high, because if it didn't, man, they would be yelling that on the highest mountain. They'd be like, "Oh, we got this THC stuff. It's liquid. You can spray it in your mouth. Don't get you high." I haven't heard that yet, so we'll see. And that must be what the DEA is talking about. Like, "Oh yeah, this gets you high so you can abuse it." All right, enough of the ranting about that. So the commenters expressing concern over that the pharmaceutical firms were profiting from approved drugs containing marijuana constituents, and another commenter noted that the FDA should not approve drugs containing any constituents of marijuana, because, like, you would be kind of hypocritical to do so, because according to the DEA, every part of the marijuana plant, all the way down to the CBD, is all Schedule 1 useless garbage. So why are you making medicines out of components of that? And meanwhile, the other guy too, like, hey, why is marijuana being left alone on Schedule 1? We know it's medicine. You're saying just one little component of it's medicine, and there's all these other medicinal things that we've been telling you about, and the government themselves in their own literature has done research and has a patent on the fact that uh, all the components in marijuana are medicine. So, there was people on both sides of it, probably. And the big pharma side, obviously they were like, "Oh, this is all good. This is great stuff. Nothing to see here. We're just going to, you know, make some synthetic THC in the lab, totally get FDA approval to experiment on it and make it, stamp it out, sell it. DEA is going to schedule to it. We're good to go. Nothing to see here. Even though half the people that work here are, in looking at some serious felony charges and could spend some serious time in prison or, I mean, what usually happens to these guys, these big players, these big kingpin drug, gangsters like the Purdue Pharma family or these guys, is they just give them a fine, and what the fine sounds like to us is like, oh wow, that's a lot of money. Ooh man, I'm glad I didn't get that fine. That would really suck to have to pay that much. But when you look at the fine as a company like Insys or Purdue or somebody like that, they look at that shit as cost of doing business. And they're, it's already written into their finances. The expectation of having to pay it is already there. It's already a percentage of their overall revenue taken out of consideration for profit. They already figure out ways to supplement that part of the pie chart too, by the way, which is why these drugs aren't cheap, and which is why they were trying to find insurance scams to pay for this shit, because these patients couldn't afford that fentanyl mouth spray. Are you fucking kidding me? No one can afford that shit. Anyway, the DEA notes that FDA-approved products of oral solutions containing dronabinol have an approved medical use, whereas marijuana does not have an approved medical use and therefore remains in Schedule 1, DEA officials wrote in the filing. I mean, you can get the DEA on record time and time again. They're never going to say anything different than that until we change that thing. They're acting like, well, we don't care about science. We don't care what the science says, or we don't care how many, testimonials or how many doctors or how many studies you have that say that marijuana on its own, like you can just pick a bud off of a plant and eat it. It's medicine. Like you don't like it because it's natural, it grows in the ground. We know, we get that. The DEA is looking out for the capitalists who are like, hey, we can't have this natural stuff that's non-addictive and doesn't kill you. We can't have that shit out there. That's not good for business. We need stuff that's highly addictive. We need stuff that you can cut down into little tiny doses. We need stuff that you can make $1 million off of a pound of it. This marijuana stuff, it's too old fashioned for the modern day capitalist. I mean, basically everywhere, that you see marijuana becoming legalized, it's kind of a game where, there's still this idea that there's a new flashy version of marijuana right around the corner that won't require breaking up buds and rolling up joints or packing pipes with it or making it into brownies, because modern science and technology will have us doing, eating a pill or smoking some kind of vaporizer hookah or some shit. Man, guys, this is not the way marijuana is a plant that grows in the ground. It's not really that complicated. So we're never going to get controlled substance number 2 status out of it. And I'd be very surprised to ever see a Schedule 3, which is like, okay, it's not that addictive. You can do all kinds of research on it, and it is medicinal, but there is some kind of inherent danger to it still. So we got to be kind of careful. Kind of like aspirin or acetaminophen. Schedule 2, it's just never going to happen. There's never going to be solid consensus that marijuana as a plant is going to be, or like a bud, or you're going to be able to test anything. Like the way that the National Institute on Drug Abuse National Institute on Health, the DEA, the way that their testing regime is right now with marijuana is that if you want to do some kind of testing with marijuana, you get the marijuana from them, and then you have to extract the compound out of marijuana or the component out of there that you want, like the THC or the CBD, and do your test based on that. You can't be like, hey, I want to do this experiment where I got somebody that smokes a joint every 5 hours to see if this happens or that happens. You're like, what? We don't do tests where you smoke marijuana. So the only thing I can see left is getting it completely out of the Controlled Substances Act. It's the only solution. It's not that it's not even as addictive as coffee, and furthermore, it's basically safe. No one's gonna die from it. It's not like if there's a lot of it out there, which there already is. You can argue that no matter how legal you make it, it's not like it's gonna blow up and everybody's gonna start fucking with it. That's just not the case. It's already legal in some places, and basically the same amount of people use it as used it before. The only difference is people that use it more often than they did before. Because, well, gee, they don't have to go to the fucking black market and risk their life to buy a bag of weed. But here we go. It's the same shit. The FDA, the DEA, just like Kratom, just like Kratom. You got something that's all natural and, doesn't kill you, doesn't make you addicted, like strung out, like you got to get more. You can, it's natural, so there isn't no measured dose of Kratom. There's kind of like a general idea dose, but there's not like, this is the exact amount of kratom powder you need in your tea to do this or that. So, of course, the DEA and the FDA are not on board with that shit. And just like these guys are with this shit, there's people out there that are making mitragina extract, basically some kind of pharmaceutical version of kratom. And of course they want to crush the competition. And the competition is marijuana for Insys. And that's why they put up the 500,000 right here. Marijuana advocates have blasted Insys for its stance opposing cannabis legalization. The company donated $500,000 to the campaign against marijuana legalization in Arizona and has expressed concerns about natural cannabis and the legalization of marijuana in regulatory filings. They're actually talking to the government like, hey, we don't like this natural cannabis that's out there. And they're not even talking about medical marijuana, which Arizona already has. They were fighting recreational marijuana. They figure the more people that are out there smoking weed, the less people are going to need fake THC. And I think that's true. Just ask the spice companies or K12, K6, whatever the fuck that shit's called. Company officials previously have told the cannabis that the synthetic drugs are highly reliable and consistent and can meet rigorous demands of the FDA process and subsequent commercialization. And that's what the Hillary Clintons of the world were talking about when you ask them about legalizing marijuana. Oh, we need to do more research. We need to figure out how we can make little doses out of that thing. No, it's a plant. And like I said, though, Insys and whoever else, you can make all the synthetic THC you want. Just leave everybody alone with the natural cannabis, because the natural cannabis is the good stuff. That's the stuff that's safe. That's the stuff that we know what we're getting every time we get it, even though you act like it's such a big deal that there's different strains and different concentrations of THC and different concentration ratios of CBD and THC. And then there's all those other cannabinoids, 70 more cannabinoids or so. Insys officials were not immediately available early Tuesday morning to respond. Cannabis 4 hours request for comment. Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to be awake that much in the morning either, man. Probably resting up for all the court dates they have. Because just about everybody that works there is in trouble. Because Insys is some predatory, like, gangster thug ass drug pushing, narcotic pushing criminals. All right. And that's the kind of people that the government does business with. And then they turn around and call people that are smoking weed criminals. They say that, you know, these dispensaries are, you know, causing problems. Whatever. Bottom line on this story is corruption wins the day. And if you ever want to like look into a company that exemplifies the battle between big pharma and actual marijuana, look no further than Insys Therapeutics.